Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's URC round 17, 5 things learned. Another very interesting weekend of rugby and some pretty important results of the South African sides. Not a great weekend really in total. Look, the Sharks and the Bulls is pretty much solidifying their spots in the top 8 and will probably be in the playoffs. The Bulls will be in the playoffs. The Stormers, however, have sacrificed their chance of potentially getting a home semi-final with a loss to Munster, and the Lions have taken themselves out the running of making the playoffs altogether. So a very frustrating weekend for two South African sides and a pretty decent weekend for another two South African sides. So this 5 things learned is basically sort of my major takeaways. Obviously, everybody's going to have different takeaways from the various weekends, so I want to know what yours are. So please put them in the description and let me know what you thought about the weekend and sort of where you stand there. And let's sort of debate this in the comments. Please also do smash a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And without any further ado, let's go to my number 1. The Lions threw away a 15-point lead within 18 minutes against what was at one stage a 13-man Leinster side. Now, regardless of what's been going on, regardless of the two teams, regardless of the injury crisis the Lions do find themselves in, that's not good enough. And they are a side that were 2 wins away from making the playoffs. They had won the Leinster game, and if they had found a game, and there were a couple of games they should have won throughout the season, they would be playing in the playoffs at the end of the day. They had the side, they had the form, they had the ability to make the top 8 in the URC, and they didn't. And there actually needs to be ramifications about that. Now, yes, it has been an improvement of the season. They're going to potentially finish 9th if they do win with the bonus points. They'll be 1 point or 1 position off from a playoff. When we spoke to Cash and Roy at the beginning of the season, they were talking about a home playoff being important, which I think was always going to be optimistic. But I think that that sort of indicates that making the playoffs was a non-negotiable. And it should be a non-negotiable, really. I think, regardless of the fact that the Lions don't have the resources of the other sides, I do think that there's enough talent in that union to be competing, and we've seen it. We've seen it. We've seen how they've beaten the Bulls, for example, and some very good sides when they've gone away. They've got good players, and the coaching staff. I think it has been an improvement this year in terms of the coaching staff. I do think that there has been quite a big difference with some of the new coaches that have come in, but there needs to be an overhaul from an administrative point of view. Coaching point of view needs to be relooked at, as well as the player recruitment, because at the moment it's just not good enough. And at the moment, people sitting there saying they don't deserve to be in the URC, I wouldn't go that far. They're going to finish 9th. They're going to finish just outside the top half, which for the worst SS side is pretty decent. They're going to finish above all 4 Welsh sides, as well as the 2 Italian sides. So I don't think it's crisis levels, but things do need to change because it's a union that could be competing and just aren't at the moment. I just don't think the Sharks can win trophies at the moment because they've got a defense where any team can score points against them. And it's a big debate at the moment in terms of having Joey Mangala, who's one of the top defense coaches in the country, heading up the Currie Cup side, whilst the URC side continues to concede points for fun. And yes, they did beat Benton this weekend, bonus point win, but they conceded 33 points. And you cannot concede 33 points consistently, or 20 to 30 points consistently, and expect to challenge for trophies. They'll probably make the playoffs. I think, if they win this weekend, a pretty big game for them though against Munster, so not guaranteed. But a win for them would put them in the top 8 and get them into playoffs. But I just don't see how that Sharks side, especially without the likes of an Etzebeth, no Ryan Jansen from Rensburg, I don't see how with that defense they can go much further than the quarterfinals. And until they sort that out, I don't see them challenging for trophies. It's a very bold call. But I think the theme for the Bulls this season is inconsistency, isn't it? And a side that went 2 months without winning to then go and score 78 points is a side full of decent players, and that it is full of decent players at the end of the day. And I think regardless, when we've looked at the turmoil of the last 2 months, you're sitting there thinking, but on paper this team should be good, and that goes to the Currie Cup team and the URC team. There's plenty of international players there. There's lots of good players in there. It's a good coaching staff. Just things weren't working. So this is the same sort of Bulls side that went away last year and beat Leinster away. And so you can't write them off by any means. And you don't want to read too much into Saturday because they're playing against an awful Zebra side. But if they can just click for a bit, they've got match winners in that side. They've got every chance of being able to create an upset. I don't see them going all the way, but I potentially reckon there could be sort of dark horses to actually find a way through the quarterfinals and win a semi-final spot, which would be very interesting if they did. Now, you don't want to panic stations after one URC loss, But it is worrying. The last 2 weeks, the Stormers have just not really pitched up, and that was in that Champions Cup quarterfinal, as well as now in this in this URC game. So it's been 2 weeks of pretty ordinary Stormers rugby, and I don't think they need to panic yet. But there is a certain amount of worry about why. Is it fatigue? Is it is it some of the Springbok players not maybe playing at their best? Did that sort of camp maybe sort of disrupt things slightly? So it's a bit of worrying. No Dion Fari's made a big difference, but they've got such a good squad. It shouldn't be reliant on just the one player. But so I do think that at this stage they should be pretty comfortable getting into those quarterfinals. I mean, to the semi-final. But after that, I think unless they start sort of clicking back to their best, might be the end of the road for them. So we're nearing the end of the URC year 2, and again, I think it's been another enjoyable season. And I know there's a lot of negativity about the URC, but I personally think a lot of that comes from a lot of the Welsh supporters. Some of the Welsh supporters haven't really enjoyed it, but I personally think that if they were to be better in it, that they would prefer it. They keep talking about the sort of Anglo, Welsh League with the Welsh teams joining the Premiership. I personally think if you're not going to compete in the URC, you're not going to compete in the Premiership. But I personally think that we're seeing a really interesting product. I think the Irish teams are benefiting a lot from the South African teams being there. I think we're benefiting from playing against the Irish teams. I think it's been good to see the majority of the fans have really welcomed the SA teams. I really enjoy playing against the Scottish teams as well. I think Benetton are really a team on the rise, and it's good to see that they're getting that exposure. So I think as a product, the URC is only going to grow. The URC, the Champions Cup, Challenge Cup is a bit of a different conversation, but I think the URC is working quite well. A lot of people complaining about the fact that sometimes there are games with understrength teams, and they don't always coincide. So sometimes South African teams will be full strength against weekend European teams, and vice versa regarding Six Nations, Springbok camps, and stuff like that. But I think that's just part of the challenge, to be honest. And I think that's part of talking about how we need to extend these squads. And Leinster have shown that if you've got the depth, you can still compete even without your stronger squad. And that's kind of where these teams need to get to. So I think the competition will only get better. But I'm interested to see what everybody else has to say about that. So those are my takeaways. Let me know what yours are down in the comments below. Please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Stephen. I'll chat to you soon.